In 2022, we celebrate 130 years of HBCU football. On December 27th, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the 2022 season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag HBCU130. Now, here's your host, Donal Ware.
You've got it locked to the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. For today, Thursday, December 30th, I'm Donal Ware. This is the last HBCU Football Daily Podcast for 2022. Hope you had an absolutely wonderful Christmas, are enjoying the holiday season, and are going to have an excellent new year. We're going to wrap up the 2022 football season. And, again, we hadn't had a chance, hadn't talked with you since North Carolina Central won the HBCU National Championship and of course, defeated Jackson State in Atlanta. I thought it was the best game we saw in Atlanta. We've seen in Atlanta in the years that the game has been in Atlanta. I think it tops. There were some really good. All of the games were good. I think the 2019 game between A&T and Alcorn State wasn't the close game. You look at A&T and Alcorn State in 2015, close football game. You look at the game in 2017, A&T and Grambling, close football game. You look at the game in 2018, Alcorn State A&T, close football game. That game against North Carolina Central and Grambling, remember it was 10-9. It's a really, really good football game. You remember the game in 2017 when A&T beat Grambling. It was a game in which A&T had to knock down a pass, I think, at the end of the game, with Grambling driving to really tie that football game. It's 21-14, if my memory serves me correctly, on that score. This game looked like Central had it. I'm not going to say wrapped up, but they had Jackson State in a precarious position in regulation. And you look at Travis Hunter, from Shedeur Sanders, that touchdown pass and catch with no time on the clock. Extra point was good, sent the game into overtime. And then, as I'm sitting there watching the game, I thought that very last play when Jackson, I'm looking around for flags because there were no flags. It was a play where Shedeur Sanders trying to make a play, incomplete pass, and North Carolina Central won that football game. So Deion Sanders leaves HBCU football 0-3 in opportunities to win an HBCU national championship, including the spring of 2021, which was his first year. There wasn't necessarily a game to determine the HBCU national championship. And it's a vote anyway, right? Like both North Carolina Central finished number one in both the coaches and media polls this year after the game in Atlanta anyway. But it was a phenomenal football game. I felt like North Carolina Central was going to win the game. It ultimately did win that football game. And so, listen, great season. Jackson State still had a really good season. I think you remember I did the report cards. I think I'd have to give North Carolina Central an A+ now, where I had given Jackson State an A+. Jackson State would still get an A for the season, but I'd have to bring them down to an A and raise North Carolina Central up to an A+. Tremendous football season, as I mentioned. And, I think for me, one of the surprises that I don't think was necessarily a great thing was South Carolina State in the season that the Bulldogs had. You got everybody coming back from that incredible win in 2021 over Jackson State. and it just never materialized. There was a couple of injuries. The quarterback play wasn't great. I mean, I think Shaq Davis did his thing. I mean, he was an HBCU All-American for only two of the wide receiver positions, and rightfully so. I mean, he had a tremendous season. It's really one of the bright spots when you look at South Carolina State on the season. So I thought that was a bit of a surprise. I mean, I thought Bowie State would have had, maybe a better season. But again, I think with Coach Jackson, he's going to be fine. I mean, that was a tough Northern Division this year, one in which Virginia Union came up. It's a good season for Virginia Union, but one in which Shawan won the Northern Division championship, right? So, I mean, I think if you look at that, I mean, I think it was good in that Northern Division was very, very good. It was great for Fayetteville State to win the championship. I thought Tuskegee had a really, really good season. You know that Coach Ruffin, is a good football coach, but to leave Miles, where he won the SIAC championship, in 21, and to leave that program, which I think only won one football game in this past year, to go to Tuskegee, who had been down for some years, who played in the SIAC championship game, losing to Benedict. I thought that was absolutely tremendous. You talk about tremendous. Benedict had an awesome season as well, finishing number one in the final HBCU Division II coaches poll as well, winning that SIAC championship and making it to this, hosting a second round game, had a bye week the first week of the Division II playoffs, and winning playing, at least losing actually in the Division II playoffs in the second round. You had a couple of casualties on the season. North Carolina A&T let its head football coach Sam Washington go. I think if A&T had won the Big South, which it played in for what was in essence the Big South championship game against Gardner-Webb, he would still be around. Delaware State, which was a bit of a surprise for me, firing its head football coach, thought he was doing a really good job in building some things. But Rod Milstead was obviously let go at the end of the season. I mean, you had some other casualties, but Thune Cookman letting Terry Sims go and actually agreeing in principle to hire Ed Reed as its head football coach. Just trying to remember, Mississippi Valley State's coach gone also, and we've had some hirings since that time. You look at Albany State, Gabe Gardenia leaving to become the head football coach at Charleston Southern, where he had been an assistant coach previous to coming to be the head coach at Albany State. So you had a lot of ups and downs with the season, the HBCU football season. By the way, Niles Gaddy took his name out of the transfer portal for Jackson State. It's going to come back to Jackson State for year 3, which I think is great, because Niles Gaddy, not only an HBCU All-American, but made a significant difference for Jackson State. So he's coming back. So you've got a lot of good things on the horizon for 2023. I wrote a piece that I want you guys to check out on our website at BOXTOROW.com. The name of that piece was "Our Coaches Can Coach Too," and it spoke about HBCU coaches and the lack of opportunities really at the FBS level, the lack of head coaching opportunities for HBCU coaches. And I invite you to read the piece, and let me know your thoughts about the piece. But on Monday, after North Carolina Central had won, I had a chance to ask Trey Oliver, the head football coach at North Carolina Central. I had a chance to ask him whether, because again, as we talked about, Willie Jeffries, the first and only up until Charles Huff was hired in 2021 by Marshall, and Marshall ended up winning the Myrtle Beach, Myrtle Beach Bowl game. Right, it's won 5 straight football games, 9-4 on the season. But I had a chance to ask Trey Oliver, hey, with only 2 HBCU grads as head football coaches at FBS programs all time, did he feel like what he was able to do in winning on a big stage, ABC, everybody watching, second bowl game of the season? I think it was the only bowl game at least going on for that time. Did he feel like his win, ABC, over Jackson State, over Deion Sanders, with a lot of people watching, was something that would make people, and when I say people, I mean specifically FBS institutions and athletics directors think about hiring? Or no, I asked him, is there a stigma? That's what I asked him. Is there a stigma against HBCU coaches? And if so, did his win, or that win by North Carolina Central over Jackson State, help to sort of eradicate to some degree that stigma? And this is how he responded.
In all the history of college football, only 2. Do you believe perhaps there's a stigma against HBCU coaches in terms of being at the FBS level? And if so, how maybe did this win, particularly on the national stage, ABC, et cetera, maybe help to dispel that?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. And I mean, it's not just in football. You just look in, corporate America. A lot of qualified folks don't get an opportunity. And, I think for me, I just have to be able to, continue to do a good job where I'm at, and hopefully folks will notice. But, I do it for the love of the game. I do it for, where my feet are now. And, if an opportunity presents itself, we might possibly look into that. But, all you can do is do a good job where you are. And I can't do anything or control what those folks do. But I know on that level, a lot of times they want to justify hires and say, is this the best person that we could find in the country for this position? And, regardless of whether it be HBCU football or the case may be, football is football. Can a guy manage the program? Can he manage the budget? Can he recruit? Can he manage the team? And, to me, that's what I think it's about. But, all I can do is do the best job I can here. And, I don't get too caught up in that stuff. But it's a great question, though, Donald. I'm not that smart to figure that one out.
No, just asking. Well, again,
but I will say this right here. Colorado could have probably got me for half price, though.
I like that, Coach. I got you.
So I don't even know the contract's not, if the contract hasn't, the ink isn't drawn the contract. I know they had to wait until after the game. So Colorado, if y'all have any second thoughts, y'all can contact my agent.
Congrats again. I appreciate it.
I don't think we'd be able to match that either. So, Coach,
that's the money bite right there from the national championship coach. That's the money bite right there.
Hey, well, Kyle, Colorado said they ain't had the money yet either. They still trying to sell some fish plates, do some car washes.
So North Carolina Central head football coach Trey Oliver responding to the stigma against HBCU coaches. So listen, I want you to have an absolutely wonderful new year. We got a lot of things on the horizon at BOXTOROW. Don't forget, you can listen to the weekend edition of BOXTOROW, which can be heard on a radio station in your area. You can log onto our website at BOXTOROW.com and click on the affiliates link to find a radio station in your area that carries the program. You can also listen to the program on Saturday, 9 a.m. Eastern. That's 8 a.m. Central Time and 6 a.m. Pacific Time on Sirius XM channel 142 of the HBCU channel. You can also listen Fridays, 6 p.m. Eastern. That's 5 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Pacific on ESPNU Radio on Sirius XM. That's channel 84. It's our year-end review show. So we're looking back at 2022 and some of our great conversations from 2022. If you missed any of these podcasts, don't forget to tell a friend about the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, where you can listen to our podcasts, if you missed any of them, on our website at BOXTOROW.com, also iHeartMedia.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also watch on the BOXTOROW YouTube page. Again, this is our last podcast for 2022. Have a happy new year. We'll talk with you in 2023. And of course, we'll talk with you each week on Box to Row on a radio station near you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at BOXTOROW.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on Box to Row with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Box to Row for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.